buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast. The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Streaming live across the world on the interwebs at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or translator. It is the quickest, fastest, greatest, most entertaining show in the state of Alaska. I mean, that's a big, bold claim. But I'm feeling like big, bold claims today. So I'm just going to say it. That's it. It is. It's fun. It's great. It's fantastic. You wish you could have more of it every day. That's what it's all about me. That's what it's all about me. Oh, good morning and welcome to the program, my friends. It is Thursday, and we are diving into it today with headlines, discussions, your phone calls. And coming up in hour two, we will be visited by Tuckerman Babcock, who is the fresh, shiny new candidate for Senate District D, which used to be Senate District O. I love how they just got to mix everything up. So you have no idea where you're voting or who you're voting for or what. Just anyway, the Upper Peninsula, and he's going to be joining us this morning in hour two to talk about his candidacy and where he sees things going in the state legislature and what he's planning on doing and how he's going to run the race and his kind of overall thoughts on what's been going on since the very beginning. So we're going to talk about, well, I mean, not like the beginning of time, but we'll go back a little bit anyway and talk with him about that. So that's on the program today. We were going to hear today from another guest, but we have since moved her to Monday. We're going to talk to Elishaba anyway, about her new book, Out of the Wilderness. She is one of the 15 children of Papa Pilgrim, which if you followed Alaskans, kind of some of the weirder, more scandalous things that have happened in the state of Alaska. She's going to talk about her story, which I just got the book yesterday, and I've been seeing a lot of reactions online from folks on Facebook locally that are just, I mean, it's an astonishing story. So it should be a fun discussion with Tuckerman today, and then on Monday we'll have kind of a heartfelt journey with Elishaba Dorkson. And we will we'll do that. That should be in hour two. In hour one, in hour one, we're going to have that conversation with her. In hour two, I believe we're going to be speaking with Chris By. If I'm not mistaken, you know, I can't keep track of all my stuff. I can keep track of it. 7:05. Chris By is going to be joining us, and he is. He's going to be running for Congress, and we're going to see what he has to say. He's running for Don Young seat. So the field for the congressional seat is starting to get a little crowded out there. So we're going to have a conversation with Chris By on Monday. So that's wow, lots of stuff going on. We're also going to be talking with. Tomorrow? Yeah, tomorrow we're going to be talking with some folks from the American Suppressor Association as well for Firearms Friday, and we're going to get a feel on what's going on with that, what's happening. We got a big banquet going on this weekend, and it's gonna be fun. So that's we're going to be talking with Knox Williams about that tomorrow. So right before the Fur Rondi thing. Okay, that's it. That's the whole shooting match. Headlines are on the horizon for this morning, so we'll talk about a few of those things, and we'll open up the phone. Look at that, people already calling in. I hadn't even opened up the phone lines yet, and people apparently want to be heard this morning. So we're going to get to your phone calls in just a second. Don't panic. If you want to queue up, you can do so this morning. It is on the Pivotel call-in line at 907-433-3150. 907-433-3150. The big news overnight, of course, is that war has started in Europe. And in fact, it is the widest-ranging all-out war since the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan in 1979. And this is not in the this is not in the Eastern or in the Mideast even. This is directly into Ukraine, which has been more and more, as of the last few years, leaning more towards the Western kind of democratic model of, kind of self-reliance and doing their thing. And they have been toying around with the idea of joining NATO, which apparently President Vladimir Putin is not a fan of. And now they have started. The strikes began yesterday or last night, hitting cities and bases with airstrikes or shelling. There's been reports of civilian casualties and reports of course, strikes on military targets across eastern and middle Ukraine. Russians say, oh, no, we're just helping our friends who were already separatists, and we were just protecting them. And it's the typical Russian response to those kind of things. And Putin rattled some more sabers by threatening any foreign country attempting to interfere with consequences you have never seen, and chillingly referring to his country's nuclear arsenal as well. The headlines are all bad for that. I mean, it's just like World War III is one of the Drudge headlines says something like, what does it say? Countdown to World War III. As the Russians' missile blitz and an all-out attack goes on, they're calling the Russian pit bulls and talking heads are calling for Kiev to surrender already. It's like surrender. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian president has declared martial law. He's asked everybody to stay home. They're calling up reservists. They're asking every able-bodied man who can carry a rifle to step up for compulsory service. And it looks like they're going to go to war. Now, what are we going to do? Well, I don't know. Apparently nothing at this point. The Security Council has met and to condemn this, and of course but since Russia is a permanent member of the Security Council and has veto authority, this is all just show. It's all just politics at this point. And it's going to be interesting to see where it goes from here. But I will tell you right now that that's not looking good. If we had been inviting them to come into NATO and now we step back and just say, sorry, you're on your own, sister, not only would it embolden Russia, it would show any other potential NATO ally down the road or a potential ally, potential new NATO member, that we really don't care. I'm just torn. I'm torn on this whole thing. And, Putin with Russian expansionism and, of course, the fact that they hold most of Western Europe hostage because they provide a tremendous amount of natural gas for the economies of the Western Europe. It's problematic, to say the least. Henry in the chat room just said, not our pig, not our farm. Well, that is true, except for that, like, we're on the adjoining farm and we can see them slaughtering all the animals in the other yard. And the question is, what do we do? President Joe Biden mumbled through something or other thing, and then took a nap or something. Not a whole lot. He basically said we're going to impose more sanctions because the sanctions we've been imposing are doing so well to begin with, and that's pretty much it. New sanctions to punish Russia for the unprovoked and unjustified attack He said he planned to speak to Americans today after a group of 7 leaders meetings. More sanctions against Russia, of course, were expected to be announced. Some of the members of the Russian the Ukrainian administration are urging global leaders to provide defense assistance to Ukraine and help protect its airspace. They said the world can and must stop Putin. The time to act is now. And so I don't know. The markets are down. Oil is up about $8 a barrel. It's over $100 a barrel right now. The ruble dropped. I can't even predict at this point what's going to happen with any degree of certainty or any. Not that you look to me for international, analysis, but it's ugly. It's ugly. That's that's the bad news. So that's the biggest headline that hit us this morning. We're also going to talk a little bit. We'll talk about Tuckerman, who we're going to talk with him, but we're also going to talk about his jump into the race. We'll talk about SB 199, SB 200. JKT, Jonathan Christ Tompkins, had a little accident. We'll talk about that. And the fact that some legislators had taken a cue from something that I had suggested several years ago. And they are talking about taking a building that was donated to them and converting it into housing for lawmakers. I don't know all the details of it, and even the paper is pretty vague on it. Although I'm looking at who voted for and who voted against it, and I don't even know how to feel about this. So we're going to talk about all this and see what is going on. But first, I guess we will go to the phones, because they've been on hold, and why not? I'd love to see what you guys want to say this morning, and we'll let you help drive the bus. Fingers crossed, everything works. I tested it this morning, but you know how that goes. We'll go over here. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from? Hello, caller? See, I tested it this morning, and it was working just fine. So I don't know if the caller's actually there or not, or if they can actually even hear me. But we will try. I did this. I swear, I really did. I put it all together. I'm like, I'm going to test this because this thing has been acting wonky, and I'm going to fix it. And I don't know what's going on. Let's go over here and try one more time. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from? You there, caller? No. Okay. All right. Well, we'll try that one. I got a couple more lines on hold. So we'll jump over here and try this on the next one. Again, if you'd like to call, 907-433-3150, 907-433-3150, the Pivotel call-in line. Let's go over here and see what this caller has to say. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Mike. Jeff from Homer.
Good morning, Jeff.
That was me, the first one. The second one, but couldn't hear you. So,
okay. All right.
Yeah. Listening this morning, this thing going on over there in Russia, our president should have put sanctions on when they moved the troops on the border, not now. He's way behind the 8 ball like he is with everything. These people that we have running this country right now, I want every politician that gets voted in this fall to realize that we need to get rid of every person that worked for them, okay, and all this wokeness, all this stuff, and stop the money flow that goes overseas, like Fauci spending millions of dollars on research that could kill everybody on the planet. They should have been searching for answer to cancer and different disease and those kind of things. But no, they spend all this money, and you got to realize how evil these people are that are running our country right now. They need to be stopped, and they need to be stopped in their tracks, big time. I know we're going to have a lot more military coming in here because we're not far from Russia, right across the water here, across the little pond, and it's a very dangerous time. And it may very well be that Biden's legacy is going to be letting World War III start. Now, right now, they should be putting their foot down. If it takes troops, I don't care what it takes. They need to go over there and straighten this mess out because it's just going to escalate. If the Chinese get involved, we're in some big trouble, all right? There will be World War III. The minute the Chinese come into this, you can guarantee we're going to World War III.
Right.
And
Well,
that.
and I gotta,
even the
I gotta,
politicians here.
yeah, I gotta wonder what's going on. I mean, there was an article in the paper the other day about a whole new squadron of F-22s that had landed at Elmendorf, and they were saying, "Oh, was it weather or is it posturing?" I fully see that we will be probably bulking up our military presence in the state of Alaska since we're so close, and yeah, we're gonna have to see. I mean, if you were chief cook and bottle washer, what's your reaction to this? I mean, I like I said, I'm kind of torn on this. I don't like to see people. I don't like to see bullies. But at the same time, do we get enmeshed in this? Do we get entangled in this? Do we stick our finger in? What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are, if it's national security, we definitely get into it. We need to be into it. We should have been into it, but we should have been a long time ago. We're a long ways behind the 8 ball right now. We should have had sanctions on these people the minute they started talking about this. We should have shut that Russian oil off, shut their banks down a long, long time ago. They should have been hurting enough so that they couldn't do this. We had the power to do that, but we have totally incompetency in the White House and the people that are leading this country. He's there to lead, not to command us, okay? And that's what he's been doing. He's like he holds the 10 Commandments in his hands. He does not.
Right.
And all these people are starting to realize, these lockdowns. I said it on your show the day that COVID started. I said, I'm not hiding under a rock, and I refuse to do all the stuff they say. And furthermore, they're going to kill more people with lockdowns than they ever will with a disease, and that's probably the truth. Okay?
Yeah.
And they're messing around with DNA and all that crap,
All right.
So it's starting to get real annoying, Mike, and everybody needs to be annoyed right now, and they need to be paying attention. Everybody.
I would not disagree with that, my friend. All right, well, I appreciate your thoughts on this. Thank you for calling in. We got a couple more lines on hold, but we're up against the break. We'll be back with more. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show continues. Your home for common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're in the break right now. Commercial break. We got more coming up. Alaska is now the eastern front for Russia and the support from the West. I mean, that's kind of the disappointing news. I mean, anytime you start thinking about Russia, you realize how close we are. Now, granted, they don't have most of their military might in the east of Russia, but they have been building out all those Arctic ports and everything else. They've got more than they did during the Cold War. Ugh. I mean, yeah. Let's go over to the phones and get the name and location of this next caller so we can return to the radio with them to see what they have to say. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Is this me?
Yes, it is you.
Hey, this is CR from Fairbanks.
Okay, hold on the line there, CR.
I don't even know where to start.
Well, don't start yet because I'm going to put you back on hold. I just wanted to know who you were, and we'll be back to you here in just a minute. Okay, so you will start we'll start the next segment with you when we return to the radio. So don't go anywhere, CR. Let me scroll backwards here and see what you guys have been talking about in the chat room this morning. Jimmy started it off with one of my favorite quotes, common sense. It's amazing they call it common. It's so rare. And that's the truth, isn't it? That is absolutely the truth. We got Nick and 12th Man over on YouTube. Good morning to both of you guys. 12th Man says, good morning from Fairweather Kasilof. It was actually pretty nice this morning when I went outside and looked around. It was kind of a nice place. Everything was, a little crunchy, which is better, I guess, than the wet, rainy, slushy, icy stuff, but not bad overall. Let's see. Good morning. Now legislatures can thank the bombing of a foreign country for financing the state. The invasion of Ukraine must have been those new revenues the legislatures were counting on. Gosh, I hope not. I mean, I hope not. We need to invite, you need to invite Walter Jones on the show. He's filed against Gary Stevens. All right, so if anybody knows Walter, put him in contact with me. I'll see if I can track him down, but we'll see if we can get Walter on board to do it because we're trying to invite all the candidates on, even the left and the middle and everybody else. That's what it is. Good morning. Let's see. Prayers for the Ukraine and Russia. I hope so. The Brandon administration is a weak and feckless hot mess. Tell me something we didn't know already. After seeing how mumbling Joe handled Afghanistan, Putin is probably laughing. Well, I mean, I will say that, again, feckless is a good word. I think that is a good, admirable word for what this administration has done. And their handling of Afghanistan probably did, in some ways, embolden the actions of Russia. Anyway, it's crazy stuff. David said incredible videos coming out of Ukraine this morning. I saw a lot of the still photos, but I haven't been watching the videos. I didn't have time this morning, but yeah, because I found out last night at 8:00 last night when everything broke that stuff was happening. So definitely not a good day for that. Good morning, Nick. Nick's over on YouTube. Biden has blood on his hands for over 80 million people now with Afghanistan and Ukraine. The Brandon administration has moved swiftly to block Chuck E. Cheese from constructing a franchise in Moscow because, yeah. I'm sure Russia was going to be a great place to do business anyway. Good morning. Michael's in from YouTube as well this morning. Biden is busy banning Nickelodeon from airing SpongeBob reruns as they've been deemed offensive to 36 of 50 genders. Okay. The videos have been impressive, says Jeannie. Yeah, I haven't watched the videos yet. Like I said, I was doing a lot of reading and some of the analysis and some of the still photos, but I wasn't taking the time to watch the videos this morning as I got up. So I guess we'll be watching some of that stuff today to see what's going on over there. But it ain't good. Let's just put it that way. It ain't good as Russia starts to flex their dictatorial muscles yet again. Makes you yearn for the good old days, the fall of the wall in the Soviet Union when they were in chaos and the Russian mafia was running everything, right? That was the good old days at this point. Now you got this ex-KGB colonel in there doing his thing. KGB's going to KGB. That's what they're going to do. All right. We're going to continue on. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. All right, continuing ahead here, getting ready to jump back into it. Talking about headlines. Tuckerman Babcock, candidate for state senate, will be joining us in hour 2. Meanwhile, we're going to go back to the telephones here and start fresh. A new caller, CR, is in Fairbanks, and he wanted to start off. He said he didn't even know where to start this morning. CR, what's on your mind?
So the problem that's really going on is that the American people are completely ignorant to what's going on with Russia and Ukraine. In 2014, they had elected a pro-Russian president. The Obama administration pushed him out, and they put in Lechiko that's pro-American and anti-Russian.
Right.
We have been arming the Azov Battalion and the Right Brigades that are descendants from the 14th SS Waffen Division that was in Ukraine during World War II. These brigades are still Nazis. They've got their unit's insignia is warped swastikas, and they still walk around Heil Hitler. But their ideology is to wipe the Russian race off the face of the earth. And that's who we are arming secretly, and the American people don't know it. We've broken every agreement that we agreed when the Soviet Union fell, that we would not come in any more eastward with NATO, but we've done it. We've stuck missiles in Poland. What did you expect Putin to do? What did you expect him to do? And now we're in this situation, and people are wanting to put troops over there. Do you know the standard of how our military is right now? They're fat and asleep. Their equipment doesn't work, and they've got no morale. So what are we going to do? Send troops into Poland and Hungary to fight the Russians to start World War III? It's not our sphere of we've got no say what's going on over there. It doesn't have anything to do with us. It doesn't affect us. And it wouldn't have happened if we wouldn't have been arming these people and threatening them every day.
Well, I mean, I agree with you that, we have a bad habit of arming people who one day become enemies of the United States, of popping up and propping up governments that we think are pro-U.S. and then later on turn out to be not so pro-U.S. after we poured billions and billions of dollars of military hardware into them. We really suck at choosing those people and getting the right allies in that regard.
But we know who we're arming. We know who we are arming right now.
Right.
We know their stance. We know their beliefs. Just like Christy Freeland from Canada. That's who her grandfather comes from. He's Ukrainian. He came from the 14th SS Division. And he went to Canada after the war, and we hid him over there. And now we propped her and put her in power. She's very anti-Russian. Russia's not over. They're not the Soviet Union anymore. And I know you say he's ex-KGB, which he was, but did you also know that Putin was a Christian that had been in hiding the whole time? He kept his Christian beliefs silent because of where he was in the Soviet Union.
I had not heard that he was Christian. No, I had not.
We are completely ignorant to anything. Most people you talk to don't even know where Ukraine is. They don't know where Donbass is. They don't know anything. But they're all saying war, 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 war. Sanctions, sanctions, sanctions. Sanctions is the predecessor to war.
Right.
We put sanctions in, the next thing we know, we go to war. We're doing the same thing we did in Iraq. Remember all the weapons of mass destructions? Remember all that stuff that was never found?
Sure. I mean, I remember it.
And here we are again.
So are you saying are you asserting that this is wait a second, are you asserting that this is a fomented false flag prelude to war, that this is what we're trying to do, this is
exactly what this is. This is to bring our economy down, to put us in further lockdown, and to lock the American people, to destroy America. That's what this is. That's all this is. They're going to lock us down. They're going to take everything away from us, crash our economy. Look at the market right now. I'm sorry, but we don't get no oil out of Russia. I don't think we get any oil from Russia. But our pipelines here in Alaska have run dry because we're not pumping no more.
Right.
This is designed, and everybody needs to wake up, especially here in Alaska. If anything, we should have good relations with Russians. We should be trading because they want it, but we don't want it. We want nothing. They're just evil. We need to fight them. Well, they were evil, but they've learned, and they've learned how evil communism is. But here we are.
Except they're very comfortable with dictatorial type edicts and rules. I mean, we've seen what's happened with opposition in Russia and things like that. I mean, they are not pure as the driven snow.
And look at the opposition here in America. Look at January 6th. Those people are sitting in prisons. They've never been tried or charged.
Well,
is there any difference here?
I mean, I would say that there's a difference here. But I mean, again, because
really look at the people. I can't have a job because I'm not vaccinated.
No. I'm not saying they're not the same. But when they disappear people who are running in political opposition, or they basically jail them for no apparent reason other than speaking out against the current regime, which, I mean, arguably, I know you're saying that the January 6th people are doing that. I mean, those were rioters, but I mean, I'm just going to say.
You just named everything that the American government is presently doing right now.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't think Russia is as warm and fuzzy as you say that they are. But at the same time, I mean, I'm in agreement with you that we shouldn't be arming people who can later on come back to hurt us. We need to understand who we're giving money and material to. But I don't know if this is all planned to do this or not. But again, Russia is not as warm and fuzzy, and they never have been as warm and fuzzy as you're purporting them to be. I mean, that's just my take on it. But I appreciate you calling in. Thank you very much. We got another call here. We'll go over to 907-433-3150. 907-433-3150. If you would like. Oh, and they just dropped off. All right, so I've got all four lines are open now. If you'd like to talk again, as much as I would like to agree that probably today's Russia is not nearly as bad as the Soviet Union, it's still, again, dictatorial in nature. I've never heard that Putin was a Christian hiding it all. I mean, while working for the KGB I mean, maybe. I doubtful, but maybe. And we've seen that he is, again, the strong man leader. That's the kind of leadership that he tries to provide. And you saw what happened again with what's his name, Neemanoff, his opponent, who was immediately jailed for speaking out against the state and what they do for state-run television and everything else. I mean, maybe it's a different type of propaganda than what we see here in the U.S. Maybe it's more straightforward, but again, not warm and fuzzy in my opinion. All right, let's go over here. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Nick from Soldotna.
Hey, Nick. What's on your mind?
Well, I notice a lot of people get a little excited and their voice raises as they go on in their spiel because they try to get as much in as they need to. But yeah, I'm a retired machinist. I work for the oil company up here on the North Slope, and
okay.
I disagree with the last caller. There's still a lot of oil being pumped out of Alaska.
Right.
Where
I mean,
it goes, I don't know.
Not as much as it was, but I mean, yeah, we're still pumping. I mean, 500,000 barrels a day is still better than, I mean, it's not the 2 million barrels a day, but it's still better than nothing.
Right. And I don't know. These guys, this regime, Putin and these guys, they are evil. I mean, you got to face it. They're evil. Pelosi and these people, they're very, I don't know what their point is trying to destroy our country, because they've got theirs, their family and all of them got their money and all that stuff. But why are they not for America? See, this is what bothers me and a lot of people. These people are destroying this country. You can't hardly even talk in public anymore without people getting uptight right now. It's just very strange times.
Well, it is. I mean, we've been more polarized and more divided, it seems like in the last 10 years than we have at any time previous. I mean, asking why people like Pelosi and others who did get theirs, I mean, they're all, most of them are multimillionaires. And you got to ask the question, why do they want to fundamentally change America? Is it the liberal guilt that has been talked about in the past, that they feel, in their hearts, they feel bad that they succeeded? Or is it just that they are elitists who believe that their way is the best way, no matter what happens? I mean, I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. It could be any combination of those things. But you're right. I mean, we need to be paying attention to what's going on.
Right. You see, the Queen's got COVID, right? Well, she's not dying from it because it's a diminishing flu. Just like all the flus that have ever come out, they always diminish. It was a deadly flu. I mean, it killed some people that I know. But it's over. And this control thing and the money that these people are making off vaccines and future vaccines and all this stuff, it's just insane. It's going to come to an end here. It's just a freaking flu, I mean, come on.
Right. Well, I mean, jumping over to the COVID thing, I mean, again, I've been saying for a while that this is endemic. It's no longer a pandemic. It's endemic, and we need to address it and move on, that it's going to be cold and flu and COVID season instead of just COVID season, or just instead of cold and flu season. I've been saying that for over a year, and it's finally settling down, and we've reached a level where most people are either vaccinated or they've had the disease, so they've got some immunity to it, and this is how we're going to roll for the foreseeable future. It's here it's going to stay with us.
I went outside. I went down south to see the grandbaby down in North Carolina and stuff like that for over a month here over Christmas and stuff like that. But I was down on Cocoa Beach down there watching people walk down the beach by themselves with a mask on. I mean, are you kidding me?
Right. No, I mean, there's some crazy stuff going on out there. That's for sure. I mean, and, a lot of it is driven by fear that's generated by the media. We're fear-mongering everything these days, it seems like. I mean, you could see all the coverage for most of this time has been driven by that fear. Nobody wanted to talk about the statistics and your rate of getting sick and your rate of getting hospitalized and your rate of dying, because it was all pretty darn low. Now, the thing is when it hits millions of people at a time, it does put stress on the medical system. But we all know that fear sells, and that's what the news media has been pumping out for the last 2 years at an even greater rate than they were previously. But we all know that fear sells.
Well, the biggest fear I've got right now is when you see what's happening in Canada with just protesters for those truckers that are getting their bank accounts shut down. Whoa. I mean, really? Can that happen here? We'll find out. Maybe.
Right.
That's kind of scary.
Well, I mean,
kind of scary.
we should be paying attention to what's happening in Canada because, again, it could, like you said, it could happen here as well. Thank you for your call. I appreciate it. I got time for one more quick call. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Terry Lyons. I'm calling from Osceola.
Hey, Tyre.
Changing direction a little bit.
Sure.
Can you hear me?
I can. Go ahead.
Hello?
I can hear you.
This whole thing with Tom Begich texting in to the redistricting board and telling a certain person on the redistricting board how to draw the lines and change the way the districts are drawn and whatnot. I think there needs to be some real serious repercussions for that. Tom Begich is on the ethics board. Do you think it's ethical that he's calling in as the sixth shadow member of the redistricting board, advising them on how to draw the new lines for redistricting? I think that's so wrong, and I think there needs to be penalties for him for doing that.
Well, I mean, I've heard some of the scuttlebutt. I've seen some of the commentary and some of the reporting on it. No surprise to anybody that there is attempted gerrymandering on one side or the other with redistricting. We've seen that in the past. I don't know if there's anything ethically wrong with him, texting into somebody if they're carrying his water and just following his direction and following his orders, exactly, then maybe there's a case to be made. But it's kind of a high bar at this point. I mean, and we see this. We expect this to happen with Republican members and Democratic members. We expect them that they're going to take their marching orders from somebody. That's the reason why those people are appointed from the different positions that they are to begin with. So I've seen some outrage over it, but at the same time, it's not unexpected at this point. That's just, I'm not surprised or shocked by it at that point, Terry.
Well, I think we should all be surprised and shocked, and I think we need to do something about it because that's why our state's in such a mess as it is right now. We need to demand our legislators to be, and I know this is a reach, but honest and fair about how this is done.
They should be. Wait.
Got totally
they should be
screwed by the whole redistricting.
Right.
Thing.
I mean, they should be accountable. Wait a minute. Terry, thank you for your call. We're out of time. We got war coming up. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
What is that?
Common sense. Regularly heard on American radio. Michael Duke Show. Radio.
Okay, we're in the break right now. We'll go back through some of the comments that we missed here. We'll go back over here. I think some other views are be taken into consideration. Sean dropped some links in the chat room, which I can't see. On Twitch, Goro said, shouldn't the dude on the phone be more worried about global warming and his state melting? He's not staying on point. He's reaching for random arguments to try and mass push on you. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, look, we've got this idea that somehow this was glorifying Russia as, oh, they're not the aggressors. They're only doing it defensively. I think basically fails to read the lessons of history of Russian expansionism, even going back to the imperial age. I mean, that's just me. Maybe I'm misreading that history. But again, nobody is innocent in this. Is America done those bad things? Absolutely. Are we doing some of those bad things today? I mean, this fractious going after the whole, the idiot rioters on January 6th and things like that. Yeah, I mean, are they trying to make an example of them? Are they trying to cancel those people and ruin their life? Yes, absolutely. We've seen that. Did they do anything about that during some of the other riots? No, they absolutely didn't. And so, yes, I mean, he's right in so many ways, but so wrong in the whole ideology that says Russia is just not the aggressor here and it's all America's fault because we supported the pro-Western president and the former SS. I mean, again, I just, I don't know. I don't even know what to say to that. There's a lot of hatred going on back and forth in some of those Baltic states, and I will agree that Ukrainians and Russians, most of the puppet states of the former Soviet Union, are not huge fans of Russia to begin with. To say that they want all Russians dead, probably not a surprise to a lot of people out there, if that is the case, because again, they were not treated super well under the former Soviet Union, and they've lived in the shadow of fear. I mean, look at what happened to Georgia. I mean, look at what happened when the Soviets invaded Georgia, or the Russians invaded Georgia. It's a simple equation, honestly. Is interfering with Russian expansion into the Ukraine ultimately our responsibility and worth the risk of starting a ground war with Russian forces? Doesn't matter if we agree with it. It's risk versus reward math. And that's the kind of formula that I'm trying to read right now, right? That's the kind of the numbers that I'm trying to do right now. Do we really want to get involved? I mean, it's not in our backyard, but at the same time, it does have global ramifications if we just sit back and do nothing. But are those ramifications enough to just let Russia do what it wants? Does it embolden them to later on move into other places? That's the question. The further that Russia wants to expand, the closer they grow towards NATO. I mean, eventually, yeah, they'll subsume all the buffer countries, and then what will we do? And then it's just NATO versus, Warsaw Pact. It's NATO versus, Russia on, they're staring at each other across the DMZ at that point. So I don't know. I don't know. It's troubling. It's troubling to watch. Not that we can do anything about it. And so I'm going to put about as much effort into this morning as it deserves. And then I will go about the rest of my day and not think about it, because I can only affect what I can affect here. I don't want to get too spun up about it, because at that point, it goes back to the whole fear thing. I mean, we spent the last 2 years fearing COVID. Are we about to spend the next 2 years fearing World War III in Europe with the Ukraine and everything? Is it one fear to the next? Is that what we've got going on? Anyway. Okay. What else is going on? What else are we watching here? I'm just looking at some of these other headlines right now to see if there was anything else that just jumped out and reached out for me. Let's see. All this nation building is why we're entrenched with Islamic radicals in the Middle East. It's like we haven't learned anything. I mean, that's the thing. If people don't want to rule themselves, right? If people aren't ready to take that step, if they're comfortable with totalitarian type regimes and everything else, then no amount of us propping them up is going to do them any good in the long run, because after we leave, they'll just crumble back to their former state anyway, and it will, they'll reset back to their level of comfort, which for many of these places is kind of the totalitarian model, right? The dictatorial model. So no amount of money or propping up or doing up, people have got to want it. I mean, in America, we wanted it. We fought for it. We fought back during our revolution. You can help if there's a revolution. I mean, the French helped us and everything else, but you can't prop it up. And, that's all I can say right now. I'd be thinking Ukraine will guerrilla warfare Russia out. Eventually the Russians will give out. I don't know. This country can't even decide on what proper pronouns are. Welcome back to the program. It is the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Good morning, and welcome to the show. We are continuing now. I know, no bumper music. I was busy. No bumper music, but we do have the phone lines open at 907-433-3150 if you want to sound off this morning. I love what Anthony is saying. He says this country can't even decide on what proper pronouns and we are not adequately prepared to voice an opinion on the world stage. That's kind of how I feel right now. I kind of feel like this. I mean, I don't even know, what to say at this point. Here's the biggest thing in my mind, and just for me. Okay, this is my take on it. I'm going to worry about this morning We're going to talk about it. We'll see what, you guys have to say about all the stuff going on in Ukraine and everything else. And then for the rest of the day, I'm going to put it out of my mind. Look, for the last 2 years, we have we've been living in fear over COVID, right? For the last 2 years. I mean, it's been a nonstop fear fest. It's the fear go round. I mean, we're stuck on it. It's just going round and round and round. Finally, it's starting to slope off a little bit. People are frustrated, and you're seeing more and more Americans are just up to here with it, and so they're letting go. So now will we spend the next 2 years being fearful of what's going on between Russia and Ukraine? Will we spend the next 2 years being worried that World War III is about to drop on our heads? At some point you got to stop giving into the fear. There's just no, you can't, we can't control it. I can't control what's going to happen in Ukraine. I can't control what happens in Washington, D.C. I can help control what's going on in the state and in my local community and in my city council, my borough assembly, and my state legislature. So I think that's where I'll focus. That's what I think I'm going to focus on. And we'll see what goes on from there. Meanwhile, here in the state of Alaska, there have been some other developments. I had talked about this a while ago, that part of the problem, the reason why the number 2 Charter of Changes point is to move the legislative session out of Juneau is because it's just so damn expensive to have it there in Juneau. The lack of housing and just everything else. And the housing has actually tightened up even more. The legislative council. It is the Legislative Affairs Agency. They keep track of the housing available in Juneau during the legislative session, and they've been reporting that they've seen a drop in offerings. And during special sessions that take place in the summer months, it's impossible for the lawmakers to find housing. Well, my thought was, instead of paying them $307 a day for food and housing, why don't you just take a building and create an apartment complex for them? And that's exactly what's being discussed right now. There was a building that was donated to them. It's called the Assembly Building. It's a 24,000 square foot building, 3 floors, underground parking garage. It's directly adjacent, apparently, to the Capitol complex. And it was constructed in 1932 as an apartment building, but it's used for non-governmental offices right now. It was donated to the legislature last August by the Juneau Community Foundation. And so now they're talking about converting it into a 33 apartment complex, 33 apartments of the apartment complex. And they're saying it's going to cost about $5.5 million. And it would be able to house apparently 33 individuals, mostly 1-bedroom and efficiency units from 470 to 750 square feet, essentially. And, while on the surface it sounds like a good idea, apparently, I don't have all the details on it, but just looking at who voted for and against it, I can see that there should be some more questions answered. There was a lot of questions on what the long-term cost of this was going to be. That maybe it's only $5.5 million up front, but what's the long-term cost of operating and maintaining the rental units on top of the prospect of potentially allowing more than 30 lawmakers to share these dorm-like buildings? I thought that Bryce Edgman's comment on why he voted against it seemed a little weak to me. It just seems like he says, we're all sort of clustered here in the building, and if you're like me, you want to get away. I don't want to be walking down the hallway and seeing everybody you just spent the entire day with. Hey, Bryce, we call that college, man. It has to happen sometimes. We call that college. Or, we call that an aircraft carrier. Or, hey, we call that a forward operating base for a military thing. You just spent all day with him and you see him all day for the entire day. Wah. That was not a valid argument in my mind. When he said that, I was just like, I don't want to see people that I've seen all day. Well, okay. I just, wow, okay. But there was a lot of unanswered questions of what the overall cost would be on this, and so a bunch of people voted against it. Those voting against, including Bryce Edgman, because he doesn't want to see other people. Peter Micciche, Mike Shower, Kathy Tilton, Shelley Hughes, they all voted against it. Voting in favor were Matt Clayman, Sarah Hannon, Chris Tuck, Bert Stedman, Neil Foster, Gary Stevens, Laura Reinbold, Louise Stutz, and Click Bishop. So an interesting mix of people voting for and against it. The bottom line is that they're going to be moving forward. They voted 9-5 to approve the $5.5 million conversion plan. And I guess we'll figure out exactly how much it's going to cost in the long run down the road. I mean, that's just kind of how it is. I mean, this is something that I suggested, although not necessarily in quite the way that they have put it here. But okay, I mean, here's the thing: I've always said, I've always said that anytime you do something like this in a government, whether it's a state or a borough or a city government, that you're going to have and you're going to assume the cost of building, or you're going to build something out. There needs to be like a 10-year fiscal note on what the estimated costs of these things are going to be. Because I got tired of seeing that when I was on the borough assembly. Oh, we're going to do this. Okay, well, what's it going to cost us in the out years? Well, we don't have those numbers. Well, when you do, bring it back to me, because I'd like to see what is it. This may be a great deal now. I mean, it may be just a fantastic deal now, but what does it mean in the future? Are we going to have this millstone around our neck for the next 20 or 30 years that we've committed to, and then we've sunk so much money into it we can't afford to get out of it? I don't know. But this is one of the next big things. Maybe people won't be crying so hard that they can't find housing. I don't know. At least 33 of them out of the 60 will have apartments available. We'll see if maybe that will be mandated by the Biden caucus as well. Maybe you've got to be in the know to be able to get it. If you get kicked out of the caucus, do you get evicted from your apartment too? Ask Barbara. That's my question. Is this ruled by the same thing that gives you your staff and your offices? I mean, inquiring minds want to know. Was the beer pong gang for or against? Well, none of them are on that committee, so none of them voted for it. But, I'm sure that they would be for it. I mean, it's like college all over again, right? Like I said, it's good. It's good. All right, we're out of time. Tuckerman Babcock is going to be coming up next. He's running for state senate in former District O, now District D. Yeah, he's up next. We're going to talk with him. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Yeah, you don't vote with a caucus, you're out of the street. Not only do you have a broom closet for an office, but you'll be sleeping on the streets, friend. I could just see that being a thing. Can't you, in the future? Oh, man. I have no idea. How much that's going to cost in the long run, but I sure would like to know. Exactly how much that's going to cost in the future, just for, giggles. I mean, why we can't come up with a 10-year plan? All you got to do is go back and look at the last 10 years. And if you're going to make improvements on the building to change some of the energy efficiencies or other things, you can account for that. But you could see what a building like that costs. I mean, it should be included in any discussion that comes out about it. And if they're like, well, we just can't get the number. I mean, if you can't get the numbers, we got a problem, right? Because I'm all for putting them in dormitories. I'm all for that. If it's affordable and makes sense. And if it's less than the $307 a day that they're getting right now on the per diem, I am all for that. But it has to make sense. Again, it'd be easier if you just move the whole legislative session to the Anchorage or Wasilla area. Because then again, most of them could drive from their own homes, and you don't even have to worry about this. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Parking garage bed. Yeah, it's We can't give people a decent PFD, but we can dump $5 million into legislative housing. Again, just think about that. Let me just. Can I do some math real quick? I've got Tuckerman Babcock on the phone. I'm going to get to him here in just a second. But let's just say 60 let's just say 50 of the legislators claim per diem at $307 a day. That's $15,000 a day times a 120-day session. Let's just say it's a 120-day session. That's $1.8 million a year. So if they got the building for free, they pump $5.5 million into it, and let's say it just costs them $500,000 a year to keep it, the heat, lights, and power on or whatever. I mean, they've paid for the whole thing in just, 2 or 3 years. That would make sense if it only costs $500,000 a year to keep going. If it takes more, then we start having other questions. Well, that's not true because there's only 33 of them, right? So that's just over half. So times 0.48. So it'd be $800,000 a year. So, I mean, maybe it's closer to breaking even. I don't even know at this point. But it would make sense if, again, in the long term, we can, we can not have to pay that $1.8 million that we have to all the time. Okay, what else is going on? Well, we got Tuckerman Babcock on the phone. We're going to jump to him here in just a hot second. He is in the virtual green room enjoying my virtual donuts and drinking my virtual coffee. And we're going to talk with him here in just a second about his candidacy. Let's see. Charlie Pierce got endorsed by the Kenai Republicans for governor. That's good. Christ Tompkins crashed his paraglider. Dang. He and Laddie Shaw were up on Flat Top in Anchorage, and he had gotten certified for paragliding last winter in California. And it was his first trip from the top of Flat Top, and he went around the long way, and when he came down, he was in a bad area, and he crashed against some trees and broke his leg in 2 places. Ow. But he's recuperating and expecting to get back to Juneau here shortly. Anything else? I guess there's nothing else. Nothing else here that it's all, all the headlines are Ukraine all the time, baby. Again, is this the new fear that we need to be sold on? I don't know. All right, we're about a minute and a half, 2 minutes out. Let's go over to the phones real quick, make sure we got Tuckerman on with us, and we're ready to go. Good morning, my friend. How are you?
Good morning. I'm fine. Good morning. Drinking my coffee.
Just drinking your coffee. Drink that. Eat those virtual donuts. Nobody else needs them this morning. I took all the calories out for you, so you should be good to go. We're going to jump into this. Are you ready to tackle this, Bulldog?
Sold on. I don't know. It's out for you, so you should be good to go.
All right. Well, Tuckerman's listening on he's listening on the stream at the same time. All right. So Tuckerman, make sure you mute that stream when we jump back into this here, in just a moment. I can hear when I hear myself, it's so weird when I hear myself on delay. Okay. What else? All the Alaska Democrats have endorsed all the folks running for Anchorage Assembly, Municipal Assembly. Perez, Veridia, Zalatel, Dunbar, and Weddleton have all been endorsed by the Anchorage Democrats. Meanwhile, there's a whole slew of good candidates running against them. We'll see if they get any traction. We'll see if the Save Anchorage crowd is ready to jump in on that. They've been pretty boisterous. They got Dave Bronson elected. Let's see if they can keep that momentum up and maybe change the tide in Anchorage, because by golly, they need a tide change in Anchorage. That's 100% sure. And what's going on in your neck of the woods? What's happening in your assemblies? Are you guys paying attention to that as well? Are you following along? Are you getting ready to file for assembly seats against some of the more progressive or left-leaning members to try and help bring the pendulum back towards the middle where it needs to be? That's what I want to know. Pamela says in the chat room, I can see that legislative housing will end up just like the office allocation in the Capitol. Broom closets for those who don't behave and penthouses for those who sell out. Yeah, again, move the legislative session to the road system. That's what you need to do. Just put the session on the road system. Everybody can drive. Well, what is it? 60% of the legislators could then drive from their homes to If it was in Anchorage or in Wasilla, they could drive from their homes and sleep in their own beds and save us a whole bunch of per diem and everything else. And it would give, 85 or 90% of Alaskans access to the session because it's on the road system. Here we go. Hour 2, The Michael Duke Show.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out themichaeldukesshow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast. The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Broadcasting live across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or translator, and around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitch. It is The Michael Duke Show. We're everywhere. We're omnipresent. We're here to entertain, enlighten, and educate. That's what we're here. The 3 E's: education, entertainment, and enlightenment. If we do any of those 3 things, we feel like we've succeeded for the day. Hour 2 of the big radio show today, Thursday, and we're about to dive into it with a brand spanking new candidate for U.S. Senate, Tuckerman Babcock. He's about to join us. Want to remind you that tomorrow we're going to be talking with Knox Williams about the American Suppressor Association on Firearms Friday, and, of course, Willie Waffle as well. But that's tomorrow. Let's jump on for today and see what's happening with Tuckerman Babcock, brand new candidate for the newly minted Senate District D, formerly Senate District O, which is the Upper Peninsula, and he joins us right now. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Michael. Glad to be on. Thank you.
Thanks for coming on. We got some good stuff for today. All right, so look, folks may or may not have heard your name. You've been a political insider for a long time, but you've worked really behind the scenes. You've never held elected office, right? I mean, you ran for mayor once back in the 90s, but most of the time that you've spent has been kind of behind the scenes. Former Republican Party chair, you were Governor Dunleavy's chief of staff at the beginning. You've worked as a political consultant for various causes and campaigns and organizations, and here you are. So give us a little bit of background to Tuckerman Babcock, who you are, where you came from, and then we'll move on from there.
All right. Well, I think the best place to start for most Alaskans is when you started in Alaska. And I came up in tow with my parents in 1966, and my father brought the family to Alaska in search of bigger and bigger mountains. And he was quite a mountaineer. He ended up founding the School of Wilderness Survival and Mountaineering at the University of Alaska, and climbed Denali several times, starting in 1967. In fact, he named me Tuckerman after the first mountain he ever climbed, Tuckerman's Ravine on Mount Washington. And we lived a life of being dragged off on adventures in South America and throughout Alaska, including crossing the Harding Icefield and crossing the Brooks Range, and just endless hikes. It was a every weekend thing, and sometimes we'd say to our friends we'd rather stay home and play or watch television. And they would just be, your dad wants to go camping and climbing? Yeah, but it's every weekend.
Right.
But that was a great start to Alaska. And then I grew up in Anchorage, lived in Ketchikan and Bethel and Indian and Wasilla, and then down here on the Kenai the last 12 years. And it's just been a great experience growing up here. My wife, Christy, and I have 8 children between us and 14 grandchildren, with one more on the way in May, and they're all 6 and under. So it's a huge and wonderful job being a grandfather, a baba, to those 14 wonderful children. And they, as I got involved I went to a high school called Stellar in Anchorage. It was a self-motivated program, and I really didn't do well in the regimented public school system. I did much better in the self-motivated system at Stellar, and it learned there about history, our Constitution. I was fascinated by the whole experiment in self-government, which actually is pretty darn rare in human history. And it doesn't just happen by accident. It happens because people, and you've said this so many times on your radio program, you've got to get involved and step forward.
Right.
And for the last 40 years, you mentioned working so much behind the scenes. It's true. I've spent, it's almost a mission field for me just to help people who might be interested understand how the process works, whether it's for school board or city councils or boroughs or the state legislature, occasionally for the federal offices, but mostly focused on Alaska. And it's just been a mission of mine and a passion to encourage people to step into the arena and get involved and help make this great experiment of self-government work. And my goal in doing that is motivated out of principle that the footprint of government needs to be as small as humanly possible.
Right.
And there's just bureaucracy. People in bureaucracy, most of them try to do their best, but bureaucracy itself, by its nature, is a sluggish, slow, unfeeling, and lacks all innovation. It's just the nature of bureaucracy. And there was a great book that affected me in college by Ludwig von Mises called Bureaucracy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
It really laid it out beautifully.
Oh, yeah. He does a fantastic job. I mean, and this is what I think. I have another question that I'm going to ask, but you've spurred me to ask another one. Because people ask me all the time, Mike, why don't you just run for the Senate? Why don't you just do this? Why don't you do that? And I looked at him and say, look, I've been in public office, and for me, it was almost the ultimate exercise in frustration and futility. Because again, I was one conservative member amongst many people. I mean, I was always outnumbered. I felt like they should have called me Dr. No because I voted no on everything just because I felt it was the only way that I could survive, intact with my pride and my principles intact. But I often tell people, I said, because I feel like I can do more good where I'm at as a radio show host, which I wouldn't be able to do if I was in the legislature. And I feel like I can make a bigger difference here. Is that similar to what, is why you were working behind the scenes versus going out in front and actually running for office?
Yes, it is. And it also, as you know, having run for office, there's a whole series of being in public and being constantly, when you want to be motivated out of principle, being in office is a very difficult position because you're only one of 11 or one of 60, and you have to learn to maintain your principles and compromise enough to accomplish what's possible. And it's that judgment call as to what's possible and how far you can push the other side and how good you are at cajoling, convincing, and encouraging other people to stand forward or be stronger. And one of the things I always try to tell candidates when they're running, two things. One is, whatever you choose to no one's going to tell you what you have to campaign on. So whatever you choose to campaign on, follow through. Be honest about what you said.
Right.
And secondly, when you're there, tell the people truthfully what you're doing and why. But you may have to make some compromises to accomplish things, and that's the reality of the political arena. It's really frustrating. I've got some members of my family who are much more purist in their conservative politics, and they can't imagine they making those kind of compromises to move forward. But sometimes it's essential, and I'm not talking about sacrificing principle. In fact, I would end up, in most cases, voting no, even if I've worked to get a compromise to move forward, because I want to stand strong on the principle of it.
Right. Well, that leads me to my next question, and this is the question that I ask, every new candidate for office who've never actually held an office before. I mean, why now? I mean, if you've been doing, and you've been making these moves behind the scenes and you feel like that's where your power is, when exactly did you lose your mind? When exactly did you decide? What was the final straw to say, I can't stand in the background, working from the background anymore. I've got to step up.
Well, it's a couple of things. One is that I enjoy working with the governor, and I enjoyed his campaign in 2018. And I want to work with him and encourage him to be as conservative as possible, and to work with him on the initiatives. He's really focusing on Alaska's independence and food independence. Those are important issues, but really more important than that is the ability to have a frank conversation and a trusted conversation with him and with other legislators. I've spent so many years behind the scenes. I've never really been part of the insider group in the sense of the special interests. I was a lobbyist just for Matanuska Electric Association, not just as a member of their management. It's never been that kind of maneuvering. Is not what I've done. It's mainly been encouraging people to run and get in office, and so that. And I watched the Senate and multiple special sessions with nothing getting done.
Right.
It's a waste of money. It's frustrating for everyone. It exhausts them. It's bitter, and it's terrible for the public because they have all these hearings and people call and they spend time out of their lives to go testify and participate, and then nothing gets resolved. And it's extremely frustrating, and I don't think it's healthy for our republic. And so I have focused on bringing people together, talking it through. I mean, being chairman of the Alaska Republican Party is a group of 80 people who are not like-minded, except that they're all Republicans. And the infighting is, you've mentioned it many times, eating our own, infighting.
Right.
It's just endemic. But
right.
What I did as chairman was I didn't have any preconceived notions of the outcome. What I did was let everyone who wanted to speak, let the debate take place, then call for the vote. And when we voted, we moved on to the next issue. It really empowered everybody. It let the process work. You didn't lock things up in little special committees. We didn't avoid taking votes on difficult issues. We moved forward and had the debate, let everyone have their say, and it really built a strong team. And I think that can happen in the Senate as well. It goes toward a new way of dealing in the Senate, and that would be, of course, letting everyone have their say, take your hearings, and then take your votes and move on.
Right. Actually voting on things on the floor, letting them out of the committee. Tuckerman Babcock is our guest. He's running for Senate District D, which is actually right now Senate District O, which is held by Peter Micciche, and he's running in that race. You just mentioned a minute ago, and I got about 3.5 minutes here before we got to go to break, but you just mentioned that you encourage candidates that whatever issue they decide to run on, they need to be honest, they need to be pure about it, and they need to, have that, I guess, stick-to-itiveness is what I came out of your comment with. So what issue are you running on? I mean, is there a specific issue, Tuckerman, that you're running on to say this is what's got to get done above all else?
Well, ever since Governor Walker started messing around with a permanent fund dividend and starting to erode and destroy the 30-year experiment in dividends coming from our royalty, and it's one of these things that you've discussed a lot on the program and others have, but it's of course simple that we're one of the only states in the United States where the owners of the oil don't get the royalty payment. The royalty payment goes straight to the state government, and under Governor Hammond, they determined that of a portion that was going to be saved, 25 or 50% of that would be of the realized earnings would be distributed as a dividend to the actual owners of the oil, the Alaskans.
Right.
It was a novel program, a wonderful program. People never complained if the dividend was $300 or $1,000. It was whatever it was based on a formula, and it worked. It worked like a charm for years. And the legislature once tried to go after it in 1999. I got involved as a volunteer chairman of Save the Dividend Mat-Su, and we beat the special interest then with an 83% vote. No, don't mess with the dividend. And then in 2016, Bill Walker started messing with the dividend. And what that led to was just capricious and arbitrary dealing with whatever the dividend should be and having it completely untethered from statute, formula. And it's been a terrible development, and it's distracted the legislature in a way that is very unhealthy for building the economy and focusing on education reform, everything else that we want the government to even consider looking at. It just gets lost in the shuffle when you're focused on the dividend. And we have a statutory formula; it works beautifully, And if that's going to be changed, it should only be changed by the legislature with a law, and it should go to the people for an advisory vote. It affects every Alaskan.
Right, absolutely. So the dividend is your issue, and I'm happy to see that because I think that that's an important one. And we saw, and yet we saw the governor run on the same thing, and I want to get back to this here in just a minute, so don't go anywhere. We're going to continue on that topic here with Tuckerman Babcock, candidate for state senate, the Upper Kenai Peninsula in District D, what is currently District O. And we're going to continue with him here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show continues. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes.
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're in the break right now with Tuckerman Babcock. We're talking about that. Rick in the chat room says distracted is an understatement. And I mean, literally, this topic since 2015 has sucked up all the oxygen in the. I think we have had more special sessions in the last 5 years than probably all of the previous 30 or 40 years of the legislature combined. I mean, it is literally done nothing but, again, suck up all the oxygen and stop all other discussion in the legislature since Bill Walker took that first step.
That's right. That's right. There's really no justification for it other than it's a pot of money that the legislature wants to go after.
Well, and I've said this for years, even back to 1999. I mean, I remember that fight. I was in Fairbanks, and we were fighting back strong against that. And, Alaskans spoke very loudly. As you mentioned, 83% said not only no, but hell no. And if you looked at what was always astonishing to me was that the anti-side, the anti-touch the PFD side, they only raised something like just over $500,000. I think it was close to $600,000. And they were outraised like 5, 6, 7 to 1 on that. The other side spent millions trying to get a hold of the PFD.
Oh, I remember full-page ads.
Full-page ads, television, radio. I mean, it was everywhere. And they were trying their darndest to get that done. And, of course, that was a POMV thing. That was really what that was about, was getting the POMV in, and that would have cut the dividends down because of that. It would essentially have been a POMV 50-50 split. And it was defeated, and yet they later on go out there, and, in fact, your opponent was touting the fact they did the selfie victory lap where they all went around patting themselves on the back for getting SB 26 passed when the POMV formula was put in place. And that contributed to this whole mess to begin with.
Yeah, layering the percent of market value way of deciding how much money from the permanent fund is available, layered over the previous statute, didn't accomplish a good result for either side. It was just a mess, and it needs to be straightened out. I really appreciate that the governor, when he introduced the dividend, he tried to follow both statutes, which left very little money for government from the earnings of the permanent fund.
Right. Well, and I think it's it's amazing to watch it. We're seeing these things come back again full circle. I've said it for years that legislators, what the ultimate end goal, in my opinion, for many of these legislators is that they want to get their hands on the corpus. And that's essentially what they are able to do now through their draw, even though they've limited themselves to 5%. It only takes a bigger vote to go beyond that and reach into the corpus of the fund. And I'm seriously troubled about that because, again, politicians have never seen a dollar that they didn't like to spend.
Well, that was the protective ring around the corpus that Governor Hammond envisioned, inspiring Alaskans to become once they got used to the dividend, and to have us unconnect the dividend from the value of the corpus allows for what you fear to happen, and it can happen in so many ways. You know what? You can write. Certainly, the corpus is supposed to be protected by the Constitution, but Is there a specific prohibition against borrowing against the corpus? Is there a specific prohibition against using the corpus to invest in all what we want to do with general obligation bonds, and then the state would pay the permanent fund back? There are lots of ways, once you crack that egg, to fry it, scramble it, and dice it.
Well, because we've seen how good they've been at following their word and paying back. I mean, the CBR, the CBR is owed $10 billion plus. And
that's a great example, and also the strong prohibition against dedicated funds in our Constitution. The judges were just able to say, well, not if you say it's not a dedicated fund, then it's not.
Right, exactly. If you say it's there's a difference between designated and dedicated. I'll tell you right now. There's a world of difference between those two things, says the judge. All right, hold on, Tuckerman. We're going to jump back into this. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Folks, like and share this video if you would. Let's get more Alaskans involved. Share it to your home pages and like and follow the show page on Facebook. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and ring the bell to get notifications when we go live, and hit follow on Twitch while you're there. There we go. All right, here we go. Jumping back in. All right, we're continuing now with Tuckerman Babcock, who is a candidate for state senate in District D, the new District D, which is formerly District O, which is the Upper Kenai Peninsula, currently a seat that is being held by Peter Micciche. And before the break, we were just talking about his issue that he's running on, and that, of course, is fixing this PFD problem, taking it off the table. And so let's dive into that a little bit here and figure out what exactly your suggestion is to do so. I mean, how do we get this that we were just talking about the PFD issue basically sucking up all the oxygen and becoming the debating point that nobody really wants to face? Nobody wants to put it out on the floor for a vote, a straight vote. They certainly don't want to put it out in front of the people because, again, as you alluded to, the 99 vote, 83% of Alaskans said no, and I think it would probably be close to that again if it was put in front of the people again. So what is the solution? Is it constitutionalizing it? Is it changing the formula? What is Tuckerman Babcock's idea of fixing that PFD problem that we've had for the last 6 years?
Well, the first thing we have to do is encourage people who support the statutory formula to file for office and run for office. On the Republican side, it's very divided as to those who support the statutory formula and those who are opposed to it. On the Democrat side, there are just a handful of Democrats that support the statutory formula. Almost all of them oppose it. And so that's the first, because you can only do what you can do with a team that's elected.
Right.
And so that's for Alaskans, for your listeners, find out who your legislator is, where they stand on that statutory dividend, and work to find someone to run against them if they're not on your side on that issue. And if we can get the right enough people, which it came so close, it's 21 to 19 in the House and 10 to 10 in the Senate. So we're very close to being able to at least in the short term fund the statutory PFD.
Right.
Now, long term, it would all depend on who gets elected as long as the statute. And we've learned they can ignore the statute. So getting it into the Constitution or getting a requirement that the public vote on any changes, those are two steps, if we have enough people, that I'd like to see accomplished.
I mean, that's one of the big complaints that's gone on. I mean, when Governor Dunleavy put forward his bill as SB 6 or whatever it was that constitutionalized everything, it offered a 50-50 kind of compromise on it and everything else. And people said, well, wait, I mean, you've run on this platform of a full PFD, a statutory PFD, and back PFD pay. And yet every legislator that we get in here says, well, I may be for a full statutory PFD, but there's just no political will to get it done. So, I mean, is that bashing our heads against the wall? Or, I mean, is it as simple as replacing some of the players that are standing in the way?
Well, we came close this last session. It was 10 to 10 and 21 to 19. I think those were the votes. And that's very close margin. And the governor strongly supports funding the statutory PFD. And that's he campaigned on that. And he also realizes the legislature is made up of who it's made up of, and he hasn't been able to get the legislature to fund a full PFD since his election. I know it's greatly frustrating, and I know that down here on the peninsula we're particularly frustrated about it. It's certainly not the only issue that's important to me, but it's one that has been near and dear to my heart for decades, and it's something I have no problem arguing with people about. We are the owners. We deserve, for goodness sake, we're only getting half the earnings off of 25% of the constitutionally required deposit of the royalty. The other 75, and sometimes it's been 50% of the royalty, it just gets spent right away by government. Not only do they want the 50% or 75% of the royalty plus all the taxes off the oil we own, now they want to take most of, if not all, of the earnings of the 25% we saved.
Sure. Well, I mean, again, it's the easiest pot of money to grab a hold of. That's the thing. It's easy to do. Once it was moved by Walker out of that kind of area of a designated fund, and it moved to a general fund issue, then it became a no-brainer, because that was the easiest pot of money to get access to at that point. And
it's all part of my general philosophy that people should have the maximum amount of freedom to run their own lives, control their own lives, be responsible for their own lives, and it just galls me that so many people argue, well, they can't handle the money, or it's too much money, or it brings in the wrong kind of people. It's all about representing the people, and I don't agree with everything and every lifestyle or choice that anyone might make. I have two very, very liberal sisters. I love them, and they make choices very different than I make. But it doesn't change the fact that we're all part of a family, or part of a community, or part of the state. But one size fits all mandated by government is such the wrong direction to go. And the other issue besides the permanent fund is the whole issue of mandates and vaccines and freedom and actually following real science and not overreacting.
Right.
And all of that has driven me at this time to put my name forward, because we need to put a better system in place to avoid the kind of option for draconian lockdowns that Anchorage and Juneau have experienced.
Right. Well, before we move into COVID, let's finish up. I do want to finish, because you mentioned these votes. I mean, 21 and 19 and the 10 and 10. Changing the players, obviously, as part of the Charter of Changes goes, and I know you've watched the show for a while, so you're probably familiar with the Charter of Changes. Changing out the players is the number one thing on there, because I think you can't keep sending the same people back over and over again and expecting different results. And you mentioned this 19 and 21 and this 10 and 10 vote in the Senate, 10 and 10. And we know that your opponent at that point, who had signed on to Clem Tillion's, PFD, compact and everything else, he was the vote 10 to 10. He voted against a full PFD and later voted for the full 50-50, and told us and the listeners here, when questioned about it, that, because he didn't want to get people's hopes up, that they may get a full PFD. But I think it would have sounded strong. I mean, if you had that vote in front of you, where would Tuckerman Babcock have fallen on that vote?
Well, that vote would have been 11-9. Absolutely.
So I think, again, changing the players is the important part here. And here's the thing. Once we get the PFD issue settled, and I mean, hypothetically we get it settled, then we could move on to fixing what's fundamentally wrong in the state. We keep hearing, Tuckerman, that what we have in this state is that we have a revenue problem. And we've heard that. I mean, I've heard that since 1999, that we just have a revenue problem in this state. And I've said, no, you're framing it wrong. It's a spending problem. We've got enough revenue, especially on a per capita spending basis for what we spend and everything else. We're doing okay. We just have a spending problem. But now we've lived in this lie so long of a revenue problem that now we actually do have a revenue problem with a spending problem on top of it. What's your take on that?
My take is that I've seen a lot of roller coasters since the 1970s in Alaska's budget. And, you never know when the next big oil field might get developed. If Joe Biden's presidency ends and then a strong Republican is elected who supports the Hanwha development and that goes forward, who knows how much oil is there. If we can reverse the Ambler mine decision, that road not being built, who knows how much those rare earth minerals can bring into the state treasury. Who knows how much we could get if we would build the Susitna Dam or a pipeline that brought natural gas and provided the cheap energy that's necessary for different kinds of industrial and technological development. It's hard to make those kind of long-term financial predictions, but as a conservative, looking at and as a freedom-loving person, it's just if we approach government from, should it be doing this at all? Should we be funding this? When I started, there wasn't even any Department of Environmental Conservation, didn't even exist. And so we've added things to it. How much has the Department of Education grown? What do they subsidize now? Those are the kinds of tough questions that the governor in his first budget actually dealt with and took with the help of Donna Ardwood, who was just absolutely brilliant. And I was so impressed with her skill and her knowledge. And she was able to take the complexity, the hiding, the many shades and curtains that were drawn over the state budget, exposed it all, proposed for the governor at his instruction, a truly balanced budget based on the income available. And then the governor combined that with some constitutional amendments for a long-term plan. And it ran into the kind of buzzsaw opposition, as you might expect, but at least it created a picture, a point in time for what we actually can afford in this state.
Right.
And we can't get there overnight. We can't get there on the first day, but that's the direction we need to head.
Well, and I think that's a prime example here of kind of doing the right thing, and then getting slapped down so hard that you blink. I mean, and I think that's the governor's. Well, it's one of the governor's problems. I think is that he blinked in that situation when he should have stood strong and said, "Well, this is the reality." I mean, I know you guys are all upset about it, and I know you want to recall me and everything else, but this is the reality. We have to face that reality, Tuckerman, or it's just going to get worse as we move forward. If we don't face the reality that we are up against this, we will lose the PFD. It will be totally gone, and we will be facing some form of new revenue in the form of an income tax or a sales tax or something else that will just continue to spiral out of control because we've never acknowledged the fact that we have a spending problem in this state.
And you're making a great point, and it can go I talk positively about different developments that could take place, and we could also talk negatively about continuing decline in oil production, or the Amblin Road never getting built, or Tongass never being harvested, or the pipeline never being built. And then the pressure, and there's no way for the income in Alaska to fund the government we have from individual income. We could not do what New York does and have a high income tax and a high sales tax and pay for this government. It is just way beyond anything of reason, and it is so misleading to keep telling Alaskans that we can afford the level of government that we've got. And we have, our local, I really am a friend and get along well with the governor and wish him the best. And our local mayor, who's also running for governor, he's done a very good job as the Kenai Borough of holding the line, keeping taxes down. And I just loved it when he just said, we're open for business, we're open for visits. When Anchorage was shutting everything down, he kept the Kenai open. And of course, Matt Sioux Borough kept open too, and I was glad to be part of that borough.
Well, yeah, I mean that's exactly what we need to do. We need to address these issues not from a basis of fear, but of faith and of understanding of human nature. You can't just shut down the whole state economy or even large communities like that. I mean, I had to laugh at the number of people that were driving out of Anchorage on a Friday night to go eat dinner in Wasilla. I couldn't get a seat at a restaurant in Wasilla because all the Anchorage people were coming out. I mean, you could see that business was going where it was invited. We needed to be able to do that. So we need to understand those things. But let's just say, final question for this segment, again, going back to saying, these people are entrenched and they don't believe that there's a spending problem. They believe that they know better than you how to spend your money. They've disdained Alaskans. Whether it was this last comment from Bert Stedman, who said that, we're all on LSD and in fantasy land if we think we can stop or cut the spending, or Andy Josephson, after 4 hours of testimony that was 90+% in favor of a statutory PFD and against what they were trying to do, telling people that they just didn't understand the real problem and that the legislators, through some kind of omnipotence, did. It's that kind of disdain. If you have to go to a legislature and nobody changes but you, how do you fight that?
Well, if that's the scenario, and I'm a lone voice, then I can be a Ron Paul as he was in the U.S. Congress. You can stand up, make your argument, and start from scratch and build. I mean, it's Ronald Reagan's great speech for Barry Goldwater in 1964. He set the stage for his nomination in 1976. I mean, the effort to be nominated and his eventual victory in 1980. Yeah, it took him a long time. It didn't happen overnight, but it is worth the battle, folks. It's worth the battle to trust people. It's worth the battle to trust our Constitution, the federal Constitution. Let's talk about the state Constitution a little bit later. It's a different matter. And to trust the system of self-government and keep the footprint of government as small as humanly possible.
Tuckerman Babcock is our guest, candidate for state senate in District D, that's the new District D, which is formerly District O, the Upper Kenai Peninsula. We're going to continue with him here in just a moment. We'll be back with more. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show continues. One final segment ahead with Tuckerman Babcock.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes on Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're in the break right now with Tuckerman Babcock. We like to change gears a little bit so we don't repeat ourselves too much. I want to talk about the Constitution and the CON, and I want to talk about the Fiscal Policy Working Group with Tuckerman, but we're going to save those for when we return to the radio. So let's get a little bit more slice of life here. What was the reaction from all your friends and family that know Tuckerman Babcock when you said, I think I'm going to run for Senate?
Well, my children they're proud of me and they think I'll do a good job, but I can't say they're that excited about it. They when I became chief of staff with the governor, it was a year of being like on a whaling voyage. I barely was able to have any time to communicate with my family, except for my wife. We kept that going just fine, but the rest of it had to be put pretty much on hold, Michael. It's just the demands of that kind of job. And I told them that in this public service, it's not going to be that dramatic. But with all the little grandchildren we've got, 6 and under, it's a precious time in their lives, and I love that job. And but there are some big issues. The Constitutional Convention's one. If Alaskans vote yes, which I certainly intend to vote yes, then we're going to need a legislature in place that makes sure that the delegates are elected fairly and that it's set up to succeed. And I'm not sure the current legislature would do that very reluctantly. So I would like to be part of making that happen in a positive and optimistic way. And then obviously we're just on the cusp of solving the permanent fund dividend issue. And we've got to make sure that the next round of pandemics or emergencies are designed in a way that it's almost impossible to have vaccine mandates and that kind of extreme response.
Right. Well, let's talk for a second about the responses overall. I mean, I think, overall the governor did a pretty good job of trying to rein a lot of that in. There were still a few things that I disagreed with. Obviously, the cities, Anchorage and Juneau specifically, had some of the more strident approaches to it, and I think wrong-headed approaches to it. Why don't you, in your mind, rate what we're talking about here with the different approaches as the pandemic progressed? What's your overall thoughts on how it was handled by the state?
I think the governor did an admirable job of taking it very seriously that first month, and when we didn't really know what it's contagious or the fatality rate was going to be and for whom. And then he started backing off the state lockdown requirements, state mask requirements, and never went to a state mandate. But Dr. Zink, unfortunately, being there by his side, her recommendation I don't want to use the word slavishly, but I guess I will, slavishly followed anything Fauci had to say, that she lost credibility with me. And I was disappointed that she wasn't replaced and someone who mirrors the governor's position appointed as the chief medical officer. But that goes to, even though I'm a friend of the governor and I support him on almost all his policies, it doesn't mean I can't disagree. It doesn't mean that we can't have a strong or disagreement and still be cordial. And that's something I do bring to the table in the legislature. I went to high school. One of my best friends in high school was Tom Begich.
Right.
And now he's very liberal. I'm much more conservative. But in Alaska, it really helps to be able to have a conversation and to have a level of trust that everything you say isn't going to be, we're not going to run off and announce it on the Michael Duke Show.
Well, I mean, let's face it. I mean, we've come to that point in society today where we are so polarized in so many ways that it's almost anathema to be able to disagree with somebody and still be cordial. It almost has to be an us versus them. That if you disagree with me, then you are the enemy. It's not that you just hold a different opinion and we can agree to disagree. It is, you are the enemy, so I must attack.
Right. And that's part of the nature of the political arena, and it's part of the nature of the increasing impact of the far left philosophy, which that's part of their strategy, is to make every aspect of our life political, and then to make it describe it in the terms of good and evil. And it's very difficult. And as the hard left grows in the institutions in America and grows in the number of political leaders, like a Forrest Dunbar in Anchorage, it makes it very difficult for the health of our republic long term. It really is unnerving.
It does make it difficult. Matt in the chat room says the governor did a great job. Is that what executive order shutdowns under threats and fines and imprisonments are? He's questioning whether the governor did a great job in that regard. I mean, would you, again, you're not running for governor, but if you had a hand in that, would that have been your suggestion?
Well, I would have suggested, first of all, to go back and I want to talk about two things. One, my effort in this campaign is to introduce myself, my philosophy, and what I would do going forward. It does help for context to talk about how I might have done in this situation, or like I did with the vote on the statutory PFD. But for the most part, I'm just going to hope that Senator Micciche does the best job he can and accomplishes the things he promised to do by whatever mechanism he can. And on June 1st, if he's an opponent, we'll do a lot of comparison and contrast at that point.
All right. We'll hold the line here. We're going to jump back into it. Like and share this video. Subscribe, ring the bell, do it all. Like and follow the show page, The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Okay, one final segment now. Continuing, Tuckerman Babcock is our guest. He is a newly minted candidate for state senate in District D, which is the Upper Peninsula. That's the new district number, the letter. The old one was District O. And we're coming back into it here, and we're going to try and see if we can get two more topics in. I want to talk about, you mentioned talking about the state constitution. I want to talk about the con. It's not been wholeheartedly embraced on the program. I still am a little leery of it because I understand that opening up the Constitution at a constitutional convention, while it could be a way to put in things like the PFD statute and some other things, it could also open it up for many other issues, and I'm a little concerned about it. You said earlier that you would fully support that. What do you say to people like me who are a little concerned about outside interests who obviously can pour money into Alaska like a cheap date and get their way? I mean, what do you say to that?
You do have a way with words.
Hey.
Well, I'd say two things. One is the people who framed the Constitution knew that there might be deadlocks and things that developed that it no longer functioned the way it was supposed to, or for our current situation. And that's why, instead of just relying on the legislature, they put in every 10 years the people get to vote directly on whether to hold a constitutional convention. So it wasn't something that the people who designed that Constitution were fearful of, and they put it in there intentionally to let the people directly get back and redraft the thing. And I tend to trust the people. And if people vote yes on this, I think the people who run for delegate, outside interests, special interests, they can try all they want to elect people. But when you're in a constitutional convention, everyone that I've researched in our national history, the people who go take it seriously. The people who go and participate in a constitutional convention, understand the gravity of what they're doing, and they certainly don't want to put out a product that is denounced and rejected by the populace in a vote. So I think that the caution is a little bit overblown, and it's not like the legislature. This is something where we're crafting how we're going, the charter document for how we're going to govern ourselves. And just like in '99, when all the powers that be spent, millions and millions of dollars, and those of us opposed to raiding the PFD were able to defeat them 83%. I think that that's the sort of thing you'd see with the election of delegates and working on the Constitutional Convention. So it's a matter of trusting the people and answering the question, are we in a state where some fundamental things need to be changed in our Constitution? And I think the answer is yes.
And will that fix the problem? I mean, you're talking about the Constitution of the state and everything else. I mean, upholding the federal Constitution versus the state Constitution. Are there other things that you see need to be fixed in this at a con?
Well, I think that the selection system for judges right now, the Bar Association has a special little spot in the Constitution where they privately get to appoint 3 of the 7 members, and my wife serves on that judicial council, and so and observing it for the last 30 years, I don't think it ends up with the best result, and I'd like to see it done differently. There are only 2 states that nominate judges that way, Missouri and Alaska, and Missouri's working on changing their plan. And we don't appoint federal judges that way. Most other states don't appoint judges that way. And there are the issue regarding our educational system. The Constitution Convention in the 50s set something up based on what they had experienced in the 20th century. And in the 21st century, as a lot of people have learned during this COVID panic era, there are a lot of different ways to educate students. And, our 8 children were educated in homeschooling, in Christian schooling, and in public school. And it depended, and some went off to the military, some went off to liberal arts colleges, some went off to AvTech. Some are still trying to figure out what to do. And it's a matter of creating as many individual choices as possible, and our Constitution doesn't allow for that. So there are those are some of the things that need to be done.
I watched this last session and I thought about this a lot. We saw this fiscal policy working group come together, a diverse group of people. I mean, from all sides of the spectrum, both sides of the aisle, both chambers, some of the most progressive and some of the most conservative people. They came together, and over the course of 90-something hours in just a short period of time, they were able to come up with a plan. They were able to come up with a plan and with a unanimous decision that it needed to be tackled holistically, that you couldn't take pieces out in isolation, that you had to be able to create this plan. Included in that were some discussions on, hey, look, we could do a South Dakota-style tax. We could increase the taxes on the oil companies. We could do some cuts. That was kind of the final consensus when it went over. We had to do a little bit of everything, and yet none of that was brought forward in the legislature by leadership. Things that were discussed in isolation, which the Fiscal Policy Working Group said don't do. What is your take on that? And if you were in there and you were making those decisions, what would you have said, and would you have brought that to the forefront?
Well, I find I was shocked at how successful the working group was in coming up with a plan that the various factions in the legislature could support. I was surprised and impressed that they did that. And I am disappointed that that plan has not been brought forward through a committee process and brought forward to a vote. It just is one of those things. Again, you set the stage, you say this is what we're going to do. The public participates, the legislators participate. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears goes into a product and making a compromise that they thought the situation demanded at that time, and then it's not brought forward through, and it's wrong. It sends a message to the people there's no point in being involved. It drove poor Senator Schauer practically half crazy with frustration because he put so much effort into it to work on compromises. I've listened to him and greatly respect him, and it's just he's one of those people you're just glad stepped forward to serve in the legislature, and then is increasing level of frustration over the way things work. And I really would, if I am elected, I certainly want to work with Senator Schauer to pull that team together that we can actually get some of these things considered and voted on.
I want to, and I think leadership is the issue here. I think leadership in the stalemate that we're viewing now, it can all be laid back at the feet of leadership in both the House and the Senate, with the inaction and things like that. And of course, your opponent is in the leadership and is the leader of the Senate. And so I'm going to give you the last couple minutes here to make your case. What differentiates you from your opponent? And if you had been in these situations, and what decisions would you have made differently? I mean, how can are you the same birds of the same feathers, or is there something completely different? Give us the last elevator pitch here on why they should vote for you versus your opponent, and what makes you different.
Well, again, I don't really know who the opponent or opponents are going to be until June 1st.
Sure. Well, I mean, we're all hypothesizing. I mean, it's hypothetical, but we know that Micciche currently holds the seat, so that's what I think a lot of people are estimating.
Well, I think that a closer working relationship with the governor, a very experienced knowledge of who all these legislators were. I was involved when Senator Stedman, I wasn't involved in his appointment, but I've known him. I was involved in Donnie Olson's first campaign for the state Senate. I've worked in the legislature off and on over many, many years, and have a good personal relationship with most of the legislators. And so there's a different sense of calm purpose. What's in the Winston Churchill stay calm and carry on through, and we're not like we're facing World War II,
right?
But we're facing some very difficult circumstances, and I know that the people who've gone through all this testifying and have been asked to testify for 6 years now on the permanent fund dividend probably do feel like they're being asked to storm the beaches at Normandy again and again and again, and we need to respect that and make this happen. And that's a skill set that I bring. I have also 10 years working in management at Matniska Electric Association, and 3.5 years as a commissioner of the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, regulating the oil and gas fields. So I bring a lot of experience and knowledge that I will bring to bear on making our legislature more functional, and also focused on getting its work done on time. A lot of these housing issues that you were talking about and per diem extravaganza has to do with sessions that go on for 200 days a year instead of for 90 to 120.
Right. Well, I mean, and we've already, and that's the thing, ignoring the statute and immediately assuming that we're going to go out to 120 every time. I mean, I think that's what you mentioned it earlier. It's a threat to the republic when people start to, the government and our elected leaders start to ignore the law. And we're just supposed to take that in stride and say that's all okay. Unfortunately, it's not. Tuckerman Babcock, you can find him at tuckermanbabcock.com is his website, coming soon, and you can find him on Facebook, Tuckerman Babcock for State Senate. Tuckerman, thanks for coming on board this morning and joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael.
All right, hold the line for just 1 second. Folks, we are going to continue tomorrow, Firearms Friday. Live well, be kind, love one another. We'll see you then. All right, one final bite at the apple, because Tuckerman didn't hold on for the bite at the apple. Okay, well, that's fine. All right, well, that does it for today. I'd like a little more strident support. I'd like a little bit more strident reaction to show the differentiation between Tuckerman and Micciche. And I know Micciche may or may not be in the race. There may be somebody else, but he's the one we know, and I'd like to have, he's kind of the yardstick that we're measuring against. I would like to have some more salient point. I'd like to have some more, things to differentiate between Tuckerman and Micciche. I think that's important. But we'll see. We'll see what's going on. I mean, at this point, changing the player seems to be important. And obviously, Peter Micciche, a hell of a nice guy, not getting the job done that I think needs to get done. And so changing the players out becomes more important than ever. But we'll see you. We'll see you tomorrow, I guess, and we'll chat again then for Firearms Friday. I'm excited about that. Thanks for coming in. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Have a great day, my friends.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.